Chapter 1641 Reinforcements from All Sides. Zhang Yi looked at Li Jian and said with a calm gaze, "This plant is very special, it is an important weapon for me." Next, Tianhai City is about to face an incomparably difficult war. As the guardian of Tianhai City, I need a much stronger power in order to protect everyone. Li Jian. Zhang Yi stared at Li Jian with firm eyes. "Are you willing to join me and guard Tianhai City? Guard everything we've fought for together for 3 years." Li Jian did not have a choice because Zhang Yi had only come to inform him when he made his decision. However, as a qualified leader, one needed to consider the emotions of their subordinates when giving orders. Especially this kind of thing that required risking one's life. In case Li Jian crumbled inside, even if he could barely take this job next, it would reduce work efficiency. As expected, after hearing these words from Zhang Yi, Li Jian's heart also understood the importance of the matter. He nodded vigorously. "Supreme Excellency, I owe this life to you. If it wasn't for you taking me and my husband and wife in at first, we would have already died in the freezing cold. Not to mention that you are protecting the safety of the entire Tianhai City this time. Even if I die, I will still do this thing beautifully." Zhang Yi smiled faintly, very satisfied with Li Jian's stance. "Don't worry, I will give you maximum security. And you, your wife Zhang Jianfang, and that newly born daughter Li Beibei, will all be held to the same standard of living as the base leader in the future. If anything happens to you, I will protect them for the rest of their lives." Li Jian and Zhang Jianfang were both in their 40s, once they had a son, but unfortunately that son died during the snow worship sect war back then. But people always have to look forward, and last year, they gave birth to another daughter in the middle of the base, named Li Beibei. The husband and wife doted on this old daughter. She can be said to be Li Jian's heartmeat. Zhang Yi had completely solved Li Jian's worries, and the last bit of Li Jian's worries had completely disappeared. "Thank you, Supreme Excellency," Li Jian said from the bottom of his heart. Zhang Yi brought Li Jian back to the shelter before directly arranging an infirmary for him to specialize in cultivating the sword in the tree. The sword in the tree was now a plant, shedding almost all human attributes. Therefore, Zhang Yi thought that with the help of Li Jian's ability, he could accelerate the growth of the sword in the tree, so that it could quickly absorb away the divine substance of the source of God and complete the evolution of its life level. By then, Zhang Yi's strength would be able to rise another level. Everything was planned, and after Li Jian returned, Zhou Qi took charge of what came next. Li Jian's ability was sacrifice, which allowed him to utilize his own flesh and blood and supernatural abilities to accelerate the growth of plants and enhance their quality. So the consumption of himself was very huge. Therefore, Zhou Qi had also prepared a large amount of nutrient solutions and medicines to avoid accidents during the cultivation process. For this reason, she had specially asked Liu Karen to create a transparent biocompartment for Li Jian. After Li Jian arrived here and saw everything that was prepared, he naturally understood in his heart that he was just a part of the plan. However, he, who was deeply sensible, naturally didn't have any unwillingness. Instead, he calmly changed into his clothes and lay down inside the nutrient silo under the guidance of Zhou Qi. The next step was to access his body with tubes and inject nutrient solutions as well as life-supporting drugs. As Zhang Yi watched all of this, the sword in the tree in his right hand disintegrated from its bracelet form and turned into a green mass of plants before jumping directly into the nutrient solution. Like a leech, it drilled into Li Jian's body from his arm. Zhang Yi felt pain as he watched, and to be honest, if it wasn't for the urgency of the situation, he would have been a bit intolerant. However, Li Jian had long gotten used to this kind of thing, so he just calmly closed his eyes. Zhang Yi reached out and picked flour up from the ground next to him, pointing at the nutritional bin and carefully instructing it, "Flour, you have to stay here for the next few days, don't go anywhere. Keep a good watch. Prevent any changes from occurring. This matter is very important to us, understand?" After saying that, Zhang Yi directly opened the dimensional space and gave it a small mountain of dried fish. Flower opened his big mouth and yawned, saying leisurely, "Meow, I know. It's just such a small thing." Only then did Zhang Yi leave in peace. Hopefully, the sword in the tree would be able to complete its evolution before the next war came. Just when that day would come, no one knew. After Zhang Yi left the basement and came to the living room, Yang Xie tenderly came over and handed him a cup of hot coffee. "Zhang Yi, you look a little tired lately. Do you want to take a good rest? I've recently learned ear picking. It's very effective in relieving mental stress." Zhang Yi's eyes lit up as he blinked at her. "Let's talk about it in the evening." Yang Xie hid a smile. "Got it. Then don't forget to come to my room tonight." Zhang Yi carried the coffee and went over to Yang Xinxin. He wanted to have a chat with Yang Xinxin about the pupil organization. Although the other party had expressed their goodwill to him and even sent him a big gift. However, Zhang Yi was a person who deeply understood the truth that if you offer something for nothing, you're either a traitor or a thief. Well, it didn't sound good to talk like that. But it was always fine to be cautious. At the very least, he had to figure out if the other party had any plans on him. Zhang Yi came to the control center, and Yang Xinxin, as the chief commander of the battlefield at this moment, was in charge of communicating with the representatives of the 6 regions and discussing the details of the battle. It was another complicated and lengthy meeting. Because there were too many forces involved, and there was also a need to look at the reaction of the international community to determine if there were any external reinforcements. So there was no way to come up with a proper battle plan in a short period of time. But right now, the most important point was to gather troops. They had a very big advantage in fighting locally, and the biggest gap between them and the Misty Valley forces was actually the high-level mutants. This time alone, counting the unit that attacked Columbia's naval fleet, the Epsilon-level Inhumans that were deployed from Misty Valley amounted to 11. As for Captain-level mutants, they were only elite soldiers in other people's places, and they had dispatched 700 to 800 of them at once. This was absolute strength-crushing. Even in a head-on confrontation, without the advantage of geography, Huashu Kingdom would not have the upper hand. So this time, they very much needed help from the outside world. However, Zhang Yi got good news when he arrived at the control center. Meng Yuanjun gave the reply they had gotten from asking for help from outside. "Currently, we have sent letters of request for help to more than 20 countries, regions, or special organizations, and have received 11 responses. Excluding some of the smaller countries in the neighborhood, who were only able to symbolically send a small number of mutant troops to support us at most, the ones who were truly able to give us assistance were Columbia as well as Fremons." Chapter 1642 Sharing Weapon Technology. Columbia and Fremons were the 2 countries with very forward strength among the top 10 forces in the world today. Of course, among the top 10 organizations, Neon was already in name only today. However, the strength of these 2 kingdoms was something closer to Huashu Kingdom, and could at least be ranked in the top 5 levels of the world. With the support of their mutant troops, it would even be more useful than the support of dozens of small and medium-sized kingdoms. Zhang Yi asked, "What about other kingdoms? For example, those old powerhouses in Europe?" As for Brahma, Zhang Yi was simply too lazy to ask. Brahma bordered Huashu Kingdom and everything was contradictory. Brahma even saw Huashu Kingdom as a rival and had been secretly messing things up. For example, in the previous southwest region, they had even sent people over with mischievous intentions. Therefore, Zhang Yi did not have much goodwill towards this kingdom, much less expecting them to send people over to help. Just according to his understanding, those kingdoms in Western Europe also possessed very good strength. For example, the old world's #1 power, Britannia. He had fought with the Knights of the Circle and knew that they were very strong. If those guys were able to come, well, it would be better to forget about it. Zhang Yi remembered his sword in the tree again. If King Arthur really came, it would be good if he didn't play with his life. Meng Yuanjun said, "Currently, all regions of the world are not at peace, so you have to realize that we are not the only ones who are facing all sorts of existential problems. the Western European side can't fight across half the planet, and even if mutants were sent, they would at most be below captain level. There isn't much significance to it, so it can be ignored. Han Shanzhua frowned. Only Columbia and Fremont? How many can they send? Meng Yuanjun glanced at the information in his hand and slowly said, on Fremont's side, the one who was sent was a top mutant from the Pantheon, Thunder God Purin. And on Columbia's side, traveling to the Asia-Pacific region, the one in charge of the relevant matters is Newton, from the Natural Science Association. Newton? This name could be said to be too familiar to everyone, and it was just a bit funny. This was because amongst today's society, it was agreed that the official codenames for mutants were all named after mythological characters. In this way, on one hand, it could clarify the kingdom or region that the mutants came from. On the other hand, compared to the complicated names of the various kingdoms, the mythological characters were more memorable. And it was the first time I had heard of using the name of a historical figure as a codename. Yang Xinxin softly explained to Zhang Yi, it's because Columbia's history is very short, and it's impossible for them to use Indian myths as their own traditional myths. When Zhang Yi thought of this, he could not help but think of Lord of the Ocean, Cardalus, and Piercer, Canelo. Indeed, mutants of the Epsilon level would look out of place if they continued to quote the myths of other civilizations. And using the sages of the scientific school as their code names would aptly show that they respected the spirit of science. Zhang Yi shrugged, but Newton doesn't seem to be a Columbia either. Yang Xinxin's eyes curved into a crescent moon as she smiled. If it has to be counted that way, as an immigrant country they probably don't have anything to name it after. Zhang Yi had only made a small joke, and in fact everyone was only able to use this matter as a jibe at Columbia. But then again, one had to admit that they did possess the topmost strength on this planet, and were one of the few who could arm wrestle with Huashu Kingdom. Zhang Yi asked, Marshal Meng, that Thunder God Purin, and Newton, you mentioned, how strong are they? Meng Yuanjun looked at the information in his hand and replied with a smile, these two, according to the official intelligence, are both Black Chariot-level mutants. The faces of the representatives of the 6 regions all became much more relaxed. At a time like this, it was useless to have as many low-level warriors coming in as possible. What they lacked was precisely high-level battle power. Although each of the 2 kingdoms had only sent 1 Epsilon this time around, they were definitely outstanding existences among their respective mutants. It was no wonder. If a weak one was sent, there was a huge probability that he would die in battle. Fighting against an underground civilization was not something to talk about. Li Changgong rubbed his chin and said in a deep voice, if we are able to have 2 Black Chariot lead the battle, our chances of winning will greatly increase. Only, if that Hades gatekeeper shows up as well, how should we respond? He spread out his hands and looked at Meng Yuanjun with Li Guangxiao and Zhang Yi with a burning gaze. Xinjiang region and East Sea region both possessed the top space-based weapon technology in Huashu Kingdom. Even Tianhai City has mastered powerful land-based heavenly dimensional weapon. Now that the war is urgent, the enemy could attack any region at any time. That's why I think that you should open up your weapon technologies and share them with us. Zhang Yi's heart fluttered. He had heard about the heavenly dimensional weapon used by the East Sea region during that battle. From the middle of space, military satellites were utilized to launch weapons that directly hit the enemy. It was even able to inflict a killing power with excellent effect when facing a silver armor general of Misty Valley at the Black Chariot level. That kind of weapon, both in terms of suddenness and speed of falling from the sky, surpassed the Tianhai City cannon. He was also very interested. Obviously, the Xinjiang region and the East Sea region, which possessed the strongest military power, hid their secrets. Meng Yuanjun smiled faintly and said readily, I can share the technology of space-based weapon with all of you. It's just that building that kind of military satellite is costly and takes a long time. It simply cannot be put to use in the short term. Li Changgong said, that's a problem we need to deal with ourselves. Commander Meng, right now our biggest trouble, as well as the trouble for quite a long time to come, should all be external enemies. You should not hide anything. Meng Yuanjun nodded. That's a good point. I'll have someone send you the design drawings right away. When faced with a major right or wrong, Meng Yuanjun did not hide anything at all, and this was also because Li Changgong had a point. If all the other regions were destroyed, Xinjiang region as the center of Huashu Kingdom would not fare well. The brother regions were dependent on each other's lips and teeth, and helping each other was the way to go. Zhang Yi spread his two hands and said, I can give you the same weapon drawings like that of Tianhai City. Zhang Yi was so generous that it took everyone by surprise. After all, according to their understanding of Zhang Yi, it was considered a loss for this person to go out on a trip and not pick up any money. Li Changgong nodded and said, This time, you are finally sensible for once. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. I'm a person who has always taken the big picture into consideration. As long as you guys are willing to use it, then just take it. He was certainly generous enough. This was because although the Tianhai City cannon was complex, it still had a gap compared to the space-based weapon that utilized military satellites to launch it. The most crucial thing was that its launching needed to be based on a large amount of yuan stones. But nowadays, the largest yuan stone vein in the entire Huashu Kingdom was in his hands. Even if other regions got their hands on it, it would be very troublesome to use. There was also another aspect, which was that all the weapons Lu Karen had built, whether it was other mechanical products, or the fortresses, would continue to be remodeled as her abilities increased. The drawings that Zhang Yi was giving out now would lag behind the technology that Lu Karen had mastered at that time within a few months. Chapter 1643 Admission Ceremony. The problem of weapons was easy to solve, while Zhang Yi raised a new problem at this time. It's easy to hide from open fire, but it's hard to prevent secret arrows. When an undercover agent appeared in our Tianhai City before, I had reminded you guys to be careful about this matter. This time, the major regions were attacked. The enemy is clearly a civilization from the underground, but as a result, they are directly running to attack the capital cities of the various regions, and even looking at the posture of their attack, they have a very clear understanding of our intelligence. Have you guys ever considered that there are actually undercover agents from Misty Valley right within the boundaries of your respective territories? These words caused the faces of the people at the scene to become heavy. It was true that they hadn't pondered over this issue. This was because instinctively, they had always viewed themselves as higher beings, and even when faced with the existence of the underworld, they considered them to be inferior beings. What's more, disguising themselves as humans and sneaking into the various regions to spy on information was something they simply couldn't imagine. Not to mention them, even Zhang Yi could not imagine it before he discovered Ruan Ping. That kind of creature whose body was 2 or 3 times as big as a human's was able to disguise itself as a human, and did it in a perfect way. Zhang Yi said, Of course, this is just a guess. After all, as you guys said before, even if we were to target, it would be my Jiangnan region as well as the East Sea region that had a direct connection with Misty Valley. However, what if? Meng Yuanjun immediately said, I will immediately send people to conduct an inventory of the entire Xinjiang region. Whether or not they were human, or whether or not they were from Huashu Kingdom, all that was needed was a blood test. Genetic technology was very advanced nowadays. Han Shanzhua frowned, but what if there are humans working for them? What then? Meng Yuanjun sighed, if it's like that, it'll be difficult. With 100 secrets, they couldn't do a carpet check of the entire kingdom. It was only possible to minimize the possibility that there were Misty Valley aliens still lurking in Huashu Kingdom. Even they were unable to do an inventory of the stragglers that were scattered about. Zhang Yi said, I can guarantee that there are no suspicious people in Tianhai City. As for the rest of the places, you guys can see for yourselves. Every single person in Tianhai City had to go through an extremely strict background check. And those who were in key positions had to be personally examined by Yang Xinxin, making sure to ensure that everyone would not pose a threat in the middle of the ensuing war before they could. After that, he said to Zhu Zheng, "Commander Zhu, we'll excuse ourselves for a moment. You're in charge of talking about the other matters." Zhu Zheng sniffed and nodded. "Don't worry, I'm here." Zhang Yi gave Yang Xinxin a look. Yang Xinxin understood and closed the video conference. Zhang Yi said about the matter that pupil organization had sent someone to look for him. "Xinxin, what do you think about this matter? Pupil organization, is it?" Yang Xinxin's eyes were lowered and her complexion was obviously very serious. "I do have some knowledge of that organization. It's very old and can even be traced back to before the early age. It is said that the length of its history is no less than the sovereign pontiff's origin sect. Brother, you have to be careful of this organization. They are very dangerous and very powerful at the same time." Zhang Yi nodded. "I understand. Can an organization that can casually take out the source of God and give it away not be strong? At the very least, it possesses a strength not weaker than a kingdom." Yang Xinxin said, "They gave you the source of God simply because Huashu Kingdom is the next main battlefield to face the underground civilization. This is the first time a large-scale anti-invasion war between humans and an underground civilization has occurred above the planet. They gave you the source of God simply to use you as a pawn." Saying this, she smiled slightly. "Of course, this also proves that they are examining you, hoping to pull you in to join their organization." As Yang Xinxin said this, she also revealed something to Zhang Yi. Before the end of the world, the pupil organization had also once thrown an olive branch to her, but was later rejected by her. Zhang Yi was not surprised by this at all. With Yang Xinxin's intelligence, she could easily achieve great success in many fields. "Why did you reject them?" Yang Xinxin said, "The pupil organization is highly ranked, and even if I join it, I will only be the lowest level of existence. Besides, not being able to see its true appearance clearly makes me not dare to join it hastily. What's more, I've heard of their initiation ceremony, and that's a way I can't accept." Zhang Yi became curious. Initiation ceremony? The corners of Yang Xinxin's mouth hooked up and she smiled wickedly like a little devil. "Brother, do you think that an organization like this that brings together all fields and a large number of elites from all over the world, wanting to maintain the loyalty of their members and avoid the leakage of secrets, what kind of approach would they take?" Zhang Yi said after just a moment of contemplation, "Surrender. The only way to win each other's trust is if everyone has done evil deeds together, and then they all have a handle on each other's lives. So I'm guessing that the initiation ceremony is to do an evil deed that cannot be accepted by the world. Right? For example, killing a person." Yang Xinxin said, "Rather, there has indeed been such a thing. If there are also other ways that can be used as an alternative, especially for female members." Zhang Yi finally realized the significance of that smile of Yang Xinxin. "What you are saying is, sex. In the midst of social relations, one wanted to integrate into a certain interest collective, or show loyalty to one's superiors. The male approach was usually to throw in the towel, either helping to take the blame or doing things together that could not be exposed. The female approach, on the other hand, is most simply and directly through sex. While this behavior may not be the most loyal, it has historically been the most acceptable. They always wanted to achieve the goal of controlling their subordinates in some way." Yang Xinxin leisurely said, "That initiation ceremony, my introducer once recounted it to me. Newly initiated members must wear a cloak and a mask. Of course, underneath the cloak one must be wearing nothing at all. Then they enter the venue of the ceremony and have an in-depth conversation with the members of the inner circle. And at this time remove each other's masks and confirm their identities. In this way, a ceremony similar to the casting of the name is reached." Yang Xinxin puffed up her face. "Of course I refused. Who would accept such an excessive request for membership? It's simply detestable and shameful." Zhang Yi was kind of eye-opened after hearing this. It was worthy of being a Western organization. It was really open-minded enough. However, the developed countries in the West have always been more open about sex. Zhang Yi brainstormed about that kind of image and suddenly thought that if Fatty Su knew about this kind of good thing, he probably wouldn't refuse. Chapter 1644 Receiving People. Yang Xinxin reminded Zhang Yi, be very careful with that group of people. They are very powerful, but they are also very dangerous. It is said that they believe in Satan. Zhang Yi couldn't help but widen his eyes when he heard this. Believe in Satan? What is this? It's really something strange. Satan was a demon in the myths and legends of monotheism, the king of hell. In the impression of ordinary people, it was the most evil and terrifying existence. But the people of the pupil organization actually believed in this kind of existence. The more one hears about it, the more bizarre it makes one feel. Yang Xinxin smiled faintly. What's wrong with that? The difference between a god and a demon is sometimes just a thought away. No one can say which side can represent justice. Brother do you still remember a conception we once proposed? If the myths and legends are all true, and the gods within those legends are all humans with extraordinary abilities from ancient times, or certain other creatures, then, demons, why can't they be the defeated amongst the divine wars? Zhang Yi felt that this question was a bit complicated, and most crucially, he was not very interested in it. Things that had nothing to do with his personal interests never interested him much. I see. In short, I will keep a sufficient distance from that organization from now on. Although they sent me a copy of the Source of God, but that wasn't something I begged them for, it was something they sent me voluntarily. So if they want to ask me to do something in that name, I won't bother with them. Zhang Yi was very honorable, so he wouldn't have any thought baggage. Yang Xinxin nodded in relief. That's right, this is my good brother. After a whole day's time passed, they finally negotiated a more secure battle plan. And the first step was for Zhang Yi to take Heavenly Jet Star, Daixing to rush to the whole country first, laying down the space coordinates of the star cluster, at various key nodes in the 6 regions. Space teleportation ability was a more commonly used skill amongst space mutants. For example, Zhang Yi's Space Shuffle, or Li Changgong's 6 realms without distance, could achieve a similar effect. It was just that Daixing could do it in a much larger range, being able to cover the entire Huaxu Kingdom and multiple important locations. Of course, it was impossible to want to lay space coordinates all over the country. Therefore, the places chosen were locations that were likely to be attacked. For example, the capital cities of the 6 regions, and some important resource point cities, as well as places that were relatively densely populated. The Xinjiang region side directly contacted Zhang Yi, inviting him to Xinjiang region. After all, Daixing's space ability could only work after the coordinates were set. Before activating his ability, he was not much stronger than an ordinary person, and he needed to be led by Zhang Yi to quickly travel to various places. Zhang Yi did not refuse, but considering that there had been conflicts between him and Xinjiang before, he was more than careful this time around and chose to bring Flower along with him to Xinjiang. With the distance of several thousand kilometers, it didn't take him too long to reach it. Moreover, he only stopped outside of Xinjiang city to contact Meng Yuanjun. The north wind was howling, and the weather in the north was even harsher than in the south, and the temperature was even colder. The outside of the city was covered in silver, and in the middle of the huge snowy mountains, there was a long black snake-like asphalt road. Zhang Yi stood outside the city looking up at Xinjiang city and said to Meng Yuanjun on the other end of the communicator, I'm outside Xinjiang city. Let your people come out. On the other end of the communicator, there was a long silence. Meng Yuanjun was dealing with Zhang Yi for the first time, and although he had heard for a long time that Jiangnan region's chaos had cultivated Go Dao to the extreme, seeing it with his own eyes still left him dumbfounded. Not buddy, what time is this? Allies also defense He didn't know that Zhang Yi's steadiness was only on the one hand. On the other hand, Zhang Yi was really too jealous of Ho Tu, Guanlong Yue's ability. According to what Deng Shintong had once mentioned, Ho Tu's ability was similar to a curse, and once all the pieces of an individual's information were collected, they could reach certain death. Even when facing monsters whose supernatural ability index was much higher than hers, this ability could accomplish a level slash. Zhang Yi had to be on guard. Even if the two sides were at peace now, there was no guarantee that there would not be disagreements in the future. That attack had left Zhang Yi with too much of a frightening wake-up call, and he would not tolerate any hint of things that might threaten him. "All right, I'll have them come over to meet you right away." Zhang Yi was just outside Qingjing City, not even approaching the Lianqing gates, just waiting so quietly for Daixing to come. After a short while, the doors of Qingjing City opened. The doors, which were even bigger and heavier than Blizzard City's alloy doors, opened with a rumble. Facing the sunrise, a large group of people walked out of the city. It was an extraordinary team, and the moment they appeared, it was as if they were a group of divine soldiers coming from the sky, with a dazzling luster. 30 or so people, hefty groups, varying from each other in height, weight and thinness, and there was no strict formation, but they wore uniform dark cyan combat uniforms, and on their chests, they were tattooed with a silver-colored star. The mutant forces of Xinjiang region, the 36 heavenly spirits, were all present. The one who stood before the 36 heavenly spirits, the one who led the team, was even wearing a silver military coat and gold glasses, with a gentle smile on his face, but with an aura that was awe-inspiring. Dragon's Roar Guardians Grand Captain, Xidagarba King, Shang Daowen. Zhang Yi's eyes condensed, and subconsciously his body had already made preparations to fight. Such a team was almost the most powerful elite in the entire Xinjiang region other than the Ho-Tu, and Jin Yuanzi. Zhang Yi thought that they were coming at him. However, he soon relaxed his taut nerves slightly. As long as the Ho-Tu did not appear, even if 10 Shang Daowens were here, they would not be able to keep him. "Your Excellency Chaos, it's been a long time. How have you been lately?" Shang Daowen came to a short distance in front of Zhang Yi and greeted him with a very polite smile. "It's fine, I eat and sleep well, only occasionally I worry that my neck is being missed by others," Zhang Yi said while rubbing his neck with his hand and glanced at Shang Daowen with odd eyes. Of course, Shang Daowen knew that Zhang Yi was nudging him about Huo earlier, but he didn't pick up on the topic and just smiled faintly. He then said, "You have really worked hard. Defending Huashu Kingdom's borders and guarding Tianhai City. If there were more heroes like you in the world, my Huashu Kingdom would be able to be safe and sound even in the midst of a difficult apocalypse." He was quite fluent in polite words, but Zhang Yi didn't eat this set of words and said with a smile, "I'm here to pick up someone." "Which one is Heavenly Jet Star, Daisheng?" He looked behind Shang Daowen. "The 36 heavenly spirits are all here? Is there a need to be so exuberant?" Chapter 1645. The 36 heavenly spirits are all here. Shang Daowen smiled gently and stretched his hand towards the back, and a middle-aged man came out over the crowd. He was very ordinary looking, the kind that couldn't be found even when thrown into a pile of people, only with a bit of white skin. "Greetings, Your Excellency Chaos." Zhang Yi nodded. "Since people have come, then follow me." "Your Excellency Chaos, wait." Shang Daowen, however, reached out to stop Zhang Yi, who was eager to leave. "I have brought so many people to travel with you this time." Zhang Yi frowned. "The 36 heavenly spirits are going to go with me? Are you not joking?" During the meeting, it wasn't said that all these people possessed space abilities. Shang Daowen said, "They will play a very large role in the middle of the next war." He mused for a long time, his expression becoming a few degrees more grave. "That Hades gatekeeper will really appear. These people can play an unexpected role. That's why they must follow you forward and familiarize themselves with every possible battlefield." Zhang Yi's heart was amazed. The 36 people in front of him were all of captain level, although their strength was considered quite good among the mutants. However, nowadays, Zhang Yi was already a Black Chariot level Epsilon Inhuman, and he didn't take the Deltas level Inhumans too seriously at all. Except for Yang Xinxin, who possessed a very rare type of supernatural ability, most of the fighting type of Manta level Inhumans were not a threat to Epsilon at all. There were too many of them? It was pretty much the same ending. Shang Daowen just laughed and said, "You will know clearly when the time comes. So, please also do this favor." Zhang Yi did not mind, he was only responsible for transportation this time anyway, so bringing a few more people would not cost much. Among the crowd, a woman with long black hair and a gentle gaze saw Zhang Yi, and a ray of joy appeared in her eyes. She secretly hung her head, thinking that she could follow Zhang Yi to Tianhai City and meet that man. Her heart couldn't help but leap up. Zhang Yi stretched out his hand and directly opened a huge dimensional gate in the air, then said to the group, "Follow my footsteps closely." After saying that, he took the lead and stepped into the middle of the dimensional gate. The 36 heavenly spirits immediately followed closely. The next moment they emerged from the middle of the dimensional gate, they were already 4 kilometers away. Zhang Yi kept opening the dimensional gate, utilizing the power of space to also help them achieve levitation, and after just a moment, they left Xingjing City. This extraordinary ability also opened the eyes of these 36 people. With that, Zhang Yi took the lead and led them, heading to Snow Dragon City in the Qinling Mountain, a very important strategic location. Upon arriving, Daixing immediately raised his right hand, and a silver starlight emerged from his fingertips as he stroked in midair. Space rippled because of the movement of his fingers, as if there was some sort of mysterious rune inscribed in the void. The entire process took less than 2 seconds before Daixing said to Zhang Yi, "Your Excellency Chaos, it's over." Zhang Yi watched his operation the entire time, and as a space-based mutant, he was naturally able to clearly feel the changes that occurred in the space node. If one was not a space ability mutant, one would not even know what had happened to that space node. However, Zhang Yi could feel the coordinates there. Zhang Yi just said indifferently, "Well then, hurry up and head to the next place. After all, it's necessary to lay down as many as 100 space coordinates all over the country." Zhang Yi opened the dimensional gate once again, and the next space node was at the Ghost Valley. Zhang Yi brought the 36 heavenly spirits with him throughout the entire journey, and every time he arrived at a place, apart from Daisheng, the other mutants were just observing everything around them, but did not do anything extra. Zhang Yi had been observing all of them, and in his heart, he was even more curious about what Shang Daowen had said. Even if there were 36 captain-level inhumans, when added together, could they really affect an inhuman of the Hades Gatekeeper, S level? If it was an ordinary white chariot, they might still have a fighting chance. However, thinking of the terrifying strength of the Hades Gatekeeper, Zhang Yi still shook his head, thinking that it was something impossible to do. At most, it would only provide some assistance during the battle. The large troop traveled along, and with Zhang Yi, the efficiency of their mission was beyond words. If they were to utilize airplanes and fly around the country, they would have to fly for a few days in order to run through the 100 or so places. But with Zhang Yi, they could finish all of them in less than a day. It was only when they were in the northwest region, a city rich in coal, that there was a small accident. Daixing had just carved the space coordinates in front of him, but before they left far, Daixing suddenly changed his face. "My space coordinates have disappeared." Zhang Yi glanced back at him. Daixing hurriedly stepped forward to report, "Your Excellency Chaos, I'm sorry. That coordinate that was just carved down has disappeared for some unknown reason." Zhang Yi frowned. This kind of thing concerns the future Great War, there cannot be the slightest sloppiness. Daixing's face paled for a few moments, although Zhang Yi's tone wasn't particularly harsh. But facing an existence of this level, any disgruntled look from Zhang Yi would cause him to be terrified inside. "It was my subordinate's dereliction of duty. Can you give my subordinate another chance?" Daixing looked at Zhang Yi with a face full of pleading, fearing that he would be chastised for wasting Zhang Yi's time. Zhang Yi said indifferently, "Then go back for a trip. This time, don't make any mistakes." Daixing was greatly relieved. "Yes, my subordinate will definitely finish the job properly this time." Zhang Yi turned his head back with the 36 heavenly spirits, but in his heart, he secretly said, "That space coordinate, I only need to use a more powerful space force to destroy it easily." In that case, there is no need to worry about them tampering with the Jiangnan region. I won't be foolish enough to leave a backdoor for others in my own home. Once this incident is over, I will destroy all the coordinates in Tianhai City. The person who destroyed that coordinates was naturally Zhang Yi. He just wanted to try to see if he could do it, and he found it very easy. Daixing's next mission was completed very smoothly without any further trouble. The last stop came to Tianhai City. This was also one of the key targets. Because according to the results of the meeting, the next Tianhai City would definitely be the target of Misty Valley's key attack. That was why Daixing had carefully left multiple coordinates here to prevent it from being destroyed by the enemy space ability mutants. And just as the other heavenly spirits were busy observing the possible future battlefield environment, a slender figure walked towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi had long realized that she was also there, only that he could not go over to greet her due to her special status. Now that she had come over, he couldn't pretend not to see her. Isn't this brotherly Yan Yan? Long time no see.